Live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're back here in the Weather Center. Let me go ahead and pop out the chat. It is the evening of June 30th. I saw a lot of you guys this morning. I saw a lot of you guys this morning at 8 a.m. Fast forward 12 hours later, we're back here at the helm for an 8 p.m. live update. We just got all of our 8 p.m. information, 7 p.m. Central Time information on newly formed Tropical Depression 3. That just kind of snuck under the radar. We were anticipating that we would possibly see an upgrade from this system at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Atlantic Standard Time, as well as 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. We haven't seen that yet, but Tropical Depression 3 is officially on the board, but I know the talk of the town is going to be our 8 p.m. advisory for Hurricane Beryl. You can see we are at 958 millibars, 130 mile-an-hour winds, gusting much higher than that. This is our latest 8 p.m. advisory for our folks out there, sitting comfortably at 11.2 degrees north, 57.3 degrees longitude, west longitude. It is closing in, and it is closing in quick. We're getting closer and closer to ground zero as we speak. Here's a quick glance. We'll get the incidental information out of the way. So Tropical Depression 3 is possibly going to try to steal the name Chris from us. You can see here the small little projected window of movement here. We have a 35-mile-an-hour depression that finally did organize throughout the day today and is expected to move in overnight tonight, possibly getting the name Chris designation here. We'll have to wait and see if this does actually unfold. I believe reconnaissance data did find enough to support a tropical storm out there, but National Hurricane Center has avoided upgrading this quite yet. They're being very, I guess you could say, almost finicky with developing this system because a lot of the attention is going towards Beryl right now, which makes a lot of sense. You know, this is causing some pretty disastrous flooding out there for Mexico. This is almost pretty much exactly where Alberto made landfall, and we had all that gyre moisture rotating around in Mexico. So this is not a non-issue per se, but this is not going to be the number one elephant in the room, the most significant feature on the table, if you will. So we'll have to see what happens when we wake up tomorrow morning. We'll have to see if this maybe was classified as a tropical storm, if we're going to check another name off the list and move on to the D storm out there and potentially in the Atlantic upstream of Beryl, but that's neither here nor there. Here's a look at our latest tropical weather outlook. You can see we have red across the board. This was initially red, I believe, at 5 p.m. or if not 2 p.m. We went all the way up to a 90% chance all of a sudden for tropical cyclone development after the reconnaissance aircraft finish up their first mission in 94L previously. Now Tropical Depression 3. We already looked over that. As we know, Beryl is out there and getting closer and closer to impact. And then we have 96L. We're still sitting comfortably at 40% over the next 48 hours, 70% chance over the next 7 days. Looking at our most recent reconnaissance data, not reconnaissance, excuse me, but hurricane data, as well as what the models are doing, we're seeing a lot of big-time wishy-washiness with our models. This is almost exactly what happened with Beryl. So we're not going to take our eyes off this one. This is going to be hashtag the wild card here on our game board. 3/future Chris is going to be wandering into Mexico. Beryl, we already are locked in for the next 72 to 96 hours. I want to say more so the next 72 hours, as this continues generally off towards the west-northwest between 20 and 22 miles an hour. Latest trends are indicating we just might miss a direct hit from Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. Latest trends. Over the last 24 hours, I'm noticing that a lot of our higher res model data, particularly after 12 Zulu today, now that our hurricane analysis models have ingested the recon data we saw earlier this afternoon, finally got a flight in there for Beryl. That's why we saw such incremental upgradings in its intensity. But now the latest information does suggest we're going to see a very close call towards the south. Now, that does not necessarily mean we're not going to see any impacts, but if this system does actually start to weaken as we wander through the eastern and central Caribbean, that wind core and the most significant impacts are going to stay localized to that center of circulation. So we'll have to pay close attention. You guys should still be preparing out there. Cayman Islands, even the southern periphery of Hispaniola, if you live out there and you're watching from Haiti or the Dominican Republic, you guys should not be taking this system lightly. Jamaica, Cayman Islands, it goes without saying. And then the Yucatan, Belize need to be paying close attention, as well as the islands right along the corner there of the Yucatan Peninsula. We're seeing more and more discontinuity with the models as of today. We're seeing a lot more discontinuity, unfortunately, and it's kind of concerning discontinuity. And we're going to talk about that as we get through the brief. But regardless, we still need to be preparing here in the greater Antilles. We do, but we're seeing some positive trends that this system may try to dodge you guys to the south. The models are not fully locked in on a direct hit. And if this system does start to weaken as it continues further to the west, the reason why a direct hit would be a bit more substantial than a movement to the south is that wind core is going to stay tucked to your south as well, and we might not see full-on Category 2 impacts like National Hurricane Center is predicting. Here's a quick look at 96L, the elephant in the room, in my opinion. I know that Beryl is out there, but that is like the bowling ball out there on the spectrum right now. This is the elephant in the room because we just don't know. This is another ambiguous area. This is almost like the shape for my Halloween fans out there. We just don't know what's going to happen with this one. You can see that our models, for example, the GFS is losing confidence as of right now. This thing is going to develop. That could possibly be because of the wake and the influence of Hurricane Beryl. It is far enough upstream, however, to where I do think that we will see some organization. It's not going to be as much of a heavy hitter as Beryl. I really do believe this is going to be a weaker system. We may not even make hurricane strength if this does develop before the Lesser Antilles, so we have that going for us, albeit we're still going to be very sensitive after Beryl gets done getting through that area and moving into the Eastern and Central Caribbean. I want us paying close attention to both these systems. If you live in the United States, I need you guys paying attention. Okay, I've been getting a lot of flack recently on other social media platforms because, first of all, it's not coming to the U.S., so who cares? Very ignorant. I'm not pulling any punches. If I see anybody commenting on my videos, on TikTok, on Instagram, saying nobody cares, bro, it's not coming to Florida, it's not coming here, it's like, well, that's too bad. We still have thousands of people in immediate harm's way, so you're going to hear about it whether you want to or not. This is our latest track guidance. This has been the trend. You can see that this system is expected to stay locked in, just like Beryl, and then we start to see a bit of a northward tug earlier than what Beryl is looking at. We're starting to see a bit of an indication that Beryl might start to move its way off towards the northwest a little bit sooner. In fact, I'll show you guys the latest HWRF that has a lot of folks on edge, to tell you the truth. And I know that we're still quite a ways away. We're going to see some wiggling and wobbling. Mike, if you're in the chat this evening from New Orleans, I don't want you guys to start dusting off the generator just yet. I don't want you guys to start actually actively preparing. We still have to wait and see. Guys, what I told him on Instagram, him and I have been communicating back and forth. This goes for everybody on the Gulf Coast, Texas, Louisiana, etc. What I want you guys to do is just simply monitor this. Don't take your eyes off of it. Please do not buy into the quote concrete forecast that yes, Louisiana is safe, yes, Texas is safe, this is going to Mexico. We really don't know. And I told Mike, my buddy on Instagram who lives in New Orleans, my general takeaway is I've noticed that the models will typically make some very dramatic adjustments until we are about 72 to 96 hours out. So please just pay attention to this. That's all I'm asking. Don't lull yourself into a false sense of security just yet. Remain vigilant. Maintain your situational awareness like I always say. I'm not telling you guys it is for sure coming, and I'm not telling you guys that it is not coming. I'm noticing trends, and we're going to see a lot of wiggling and wobbling. And you know what? Thinking about it when I was out and about this afternoon, and I'll go back to Beryl, as a matter of fact, right now. We'll pull up our long-range track guidance on weathermodels.com very quickly while I'm kind of airing out and going on my long-winded tirade here. Let's see. There's Beryl. There you go. So see what I mean, guys? Like, this is why we need to be paying attention. I know that the NavGem is the outlier. The NavGem just has it out for New Orleans. Don't pay attention to this one. The NavGem, I mean, it's a model, but even if it's our own Navy model, I don't put a lot of allegiance, a lot of faith in that because the NavGem has not been updated in over 2 decades. It's still running on very, very old software and internal equations and other things you want to put on the table. So don't worry about this, but the general trend here is we're starting to notice this curve, this awkward curve for my viewers who come over from TikTok. That's exactly how I worded it. We're starting to see this awkward trend that we're going to hook around the western extent of our high pressure ridge that is slowly but surely going to go from here to whereabouts over the Bahamas, and then from there it becomes a lot more ambiguous if it continues eastward or tries to rapidly build back in towards the west. I've noticed in time, and I've noticed through experience, that we typically get locked in when there are large-scale features within about 72 to 96 hours. And the number one example that I bring up through experience is not Charlie, not 2004, it's Ian. It's Ian. I remember specifically looking at that storm like I'm looking at Beryl right now, and I distinctly remember when Hurricane Ian was down in the Caribbean, we saw lots of windshield wipering. We saw this, we saw this, we saw this, and it wasn't until we were about 2 to 4 days away from Florida where we went from the west back towards the east. So it's not over until it's over. So I need people just kind of monitoring. That's all. I need folks watching. I need folks paying attention just to be on the safe side, okay? That's all I'm saying. We can't take our eyes off of it. And that's the key takeaway. I need you guys to be focusing attention. PM, I don't know what you're talking about. It is not trending further to the west. I just showed you guys right here that it is trending back towards the north. If you go through our timetable here, all of our guidance is trending it towards the north. In fact, if you look at the latest 18 Zulu here, a lot of them take it towards the Yucatan as opposed to crashing it into Belize. The European model is the only one with all of our weaker members crashing into Belize. We've seen this lifting up, and in fact, I'll show you that. No, we're not going to go there right now. We're not going to go there. I'm not going to derail the speed of the brief. I'm not going to derail the segue of the brief or the transitioning. Let's take a look at our long-range track guidance for 96, and like I said, see, we have to pay attention to this one. Our models are thinking that it could potentially remain weak, in which case it is going to wander off towards the west-northwest and crash and burn, but if you notice, there is a decent little uptick right about there that this thing can try to hug Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, western Cuba, and do that traditional track up like this, or possibly up like this. Very uncertain, very far out, but we still have two features to get through. We can't rule out either of these. We can't, because at the end of the day, we have not seen either of them enter the Caribbean yet. So for people out there to be saying, don't worry or worry, we're way too far away. We haven't even gotten into the Caribbean just yet. Let's put it that way. All right. Let's go ahead and take a look at our players on the game board. So here is Tropical Depression 3, kind of getting its act together, you know? I mean, it doesn't look bad for albeit it's got a lot of land interaction going on along its south and southwestern quadrant here. We're kind of running out of time here. If this thing is going to go into named storm status, it's going to have to do it within the next 1 or 2 updates, if that, before it starts to wander ashore and we lose it. Here's Beryl. Beryl is maintaining a very low latitude run, and in fact, it's been continuously moving off towards the west. It has not gained too much latitude, which could be a good thing for Barbados, a bad thing for Trinidad and Tobago. This could be another Ivan situation, and we're very carefully exploring that. Our models are still thinking it is going to suddenly lift towards the west-northwest, finding a weakness in the ridge that is spinning around up here. But we haven't seen that just yet, so we're already kind of missing the mark, unfortunately. And then here is 96L, slowly but surely trying to get a little bit more organized, more thunderstorm activity with it in the wake of Beryl. And like I said, I really do think we're going to get some development out of this. It may not be as fast, but if you look, our cyclonic or our anticyclonic outflow from Beryl is kind of doing something like this if you look at the cloud fields. So the greatest area of localized wind shear associated with Beryl specifically in his wake or its wake is far down upstream or downstream of where our trough pardon my language, from our location of our current disturbance back here. So we're not getting impeded by too much wind shear at this time. It's just going to be a bit more gradual because we had all that energy and instability sucked in by Beryl here, which is how it was managing to undergo rapid intensification. We switch on over to the water vapor view, and you can see a little bit better. We do have some dry air out ahead of it. There is that big plume of dry air to which we thought that was going to close down the tropics, but we haven't quite seen that happen yet, and you can see that we have enough moisture out ahead of it and enough moisture back behind it to where even though the ITCZ has been shoved down towards the south and that dry air is being pulled in along the backside of that anticyclonic upper-level flow of Beryl, we're still not seeing it really interfere with the system. Our future potential depression is right there. All this is extra just anomalous moisture that's still along our convergence zone down there near the equator. And if you start with the start of the loop here and track that eye where it's going, it is not gaining very much latitude. It is not gaining very much latitude, so we're going to need to see it lift well to the north fairly quickly. We're going to need it to go at about a 310 to 320 degree angle off towards the northwest to play a very significant role on Barbados, St. Lucia, and Martinique. We're starting to see that kind of trend a little bit further towards the south. Our models have not really picked up on it, unfortunately, but it's just not gaining very much latitude. If we zoom in on it, I have the IR here. It's not gaining latitude, guys. It gained latitude for a little bit, but right there, we're back to hugging. You can see it. We're back to hugging that 10-degree latitude line. So this is why we need Trinidad and Tobago. We need Grenada to be paying very close attention to this. Barbados, to put it into perspective, I'll go ahead and stop the clock right there. We're generally moving off towards the west-northwest at about 280 degrees. I will give it a bit of the benefit of the doubt and say that we're moving off in that sort of a line right there. When I say 280 degrees, X amount of degrees, guys, what I'm talking about is if you look at it on a compass. If you look at it on a compass, you have a 360-degree compass. 0 degrees would be due north, 180 degrees would be due south, 90 degrees would be east, 270 degrees would be west. So when I say 280, that's kind of on the compass rose where it's headed. And if you look, here's the core of the storm. So Barbados, if this thing does not suddenly hike up towards the north, you just might miss a huge majority of the action. That's how close-knit the core of this system is. And unfortunately, we're going to see the bottom periphery of this system possibly hitting Tobago and Trinidad a little bit more so. And that puts us in line for a direct hit on Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, with a little bit of St. Lucia getting that upper periphery of where the core of the storm is most consolidated. You're still going to see some feeder banding. You're definitely going to get feeder bands associated with this system. You can kind of see them wrapping around like this, flowing around it in that classic cyclonic curvature. So you're still going to get conditions. You're still going to see things go downhill over the next 3 to 6 hours. But we need this thing to start lifting up. We need it to start lifting up because it was supposed to be already approaching that 12-degree latitude line, putting it on track for Barbados. And we haven't seen that yet. I'll take it a couple times. Actually, you know what? We'll go back to the very beginning of the loop here. We'll stop it right there. I need it to shift. I need the camera. There we go. I'll put it right here, and then I'll just go all the way to the end of the loop. If it could unfreeze. There we go. And if you notice, if you extrapolate this out, we gained about, we'll say, 1/7, 1/8 of a degree of latitude. If you extrapolate that forward, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. If you see my hands move up towards the screen, you extrapolate that forward. What I'm doing is an actual meteorological principle here. I'm extrapolating it based on the timestamps here. This was the beginning. This is the end of our current loop. If it continues to just go in a straight line, moving in its current course like so, that's where you can expect the track. So we need this thing to suddenly start gaining latitude if we don't want to suffer a direct hit to Grenada and see a lot more of these impacts realized for Tobago. So every single one of these islands here need to be paying close attention. I don't have Trinidad fully circled here because we are still on the very, very southernmost border of this system. If you extrapolate the actual system out and you follow that line, you'll notice that Trinidad, for the most part, stays away from a large majority of the greatest impacts. You can see it's going to travel further to your north. Still going to likely see some very aggressive surf, stronger feeder bands, isolated funnels, waterspout activity, as well as at least sustained tropical storm force winds between 30 to 40 miles an hour, gusting higher than that when you're going through the feeder bands. One thing of note here that's extremely impressive is this thing looks like it's running a supercharger. I want you guys to watch the eastern extent of the Eyewall there as that shear tries to impede on it. This thing looks like it's sparking out. You guys remember the Shuttle Challenger? If you guys remember the Shuttle Challenger back in the 80s, when the solid rocket booster unfortunately started bleeding off that liquid coolant, it created that third little, almost like a acetylene torch just shooting out of the solid rocket booster. And if you look, that wind shear, the easterly wind shear that tried to dig a little bit of a divot on the let me refresh this. I'm tired of that 99%. That's one of my gripes about tropical tidbits when it starts lagging like that. Let's let the satellite loop buffer, and I want to show you guys something very interesting. There we go. So if you notice along the eastern extent of this system, we did get a little bit of easterly wind shear trying to erode the core of the storm. We are now so vertically sound, unfortunately, that it's not doing anything to stop it. But what's very interesting, too, is if you look right there, that little acetylene torch feature right along the eastern side of the Eyewall, it's incredible. It's incredible. That's why I'm so fascinated with these systems. Look at that little burn-off. It's like it's got a supercharger coming out of the hood of a 1970s Mustang. Those are hot tower cumulonimbus clouds that are firing up on the eastern side. It's like a defense mechanism, a protective blister for the Eyewall core to stop that wind shear and that dry air from penetrating into it. That's incredible. People say these aren't living entities, but it's awesome to see that they have internal mechanisms to prevent that Eyewall and that core from being compromised. So I thought that was a nice little touch, a little fun fact right there. You can see it just boom, 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 firing off. You guys ever go to car shows and you see that two-step competition with the exhaust going pop, 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 pop? It's kind of what's going on right there. Pretty cool. Pretty cool, but that's neither here nor there. We'll go on. I saw Eyewall Addict asking about the wind field. Here you go, buddy. I got it right here. This was coming up next, so we can look at the time frame here. This is what I was talking about. So if you look, this blue shading here is your extent of the tropical storm force winds. Obviously, in my personal experience riding out older hurricanes here in Florida, as well as just understanding the nature of the beast with meteorology, this shield right here, this circular depiction, is not the end-all be-all. During Idalia last year, for example, we had this huge swath of tropical storm force winds that were supposed to get all the way into Polk, Sumter County as that system came up our west coast. We didn't really get anything here. We saw maybe 20, 25 mile an hour, and That was it. So I don't really put a huge amount of faith in the black lines on here. As I always emphasize to you guys, these things, they don't operate in black and white. So don't really pay too much attention to the general black and white lines here. In fact, I would argue kind of look at it more of like this, like a high, that's too small. I want a bigger thing like that. There we go. Kind of look at it like this, kind of like a kind of hazy highlighter, if you will. Hazy highlighter. Don't use those specific solid fine point lines to show you guys where the winds are. But you can see here, actually, no, I lied. I just realized right now, as a matter of fact, I'm so sorry, guys. The National Hurricane Center at 5 p.m. did adjust their track. So you can see that we still have hurricane warnings in effect for Barbados, St. Lucia, Martinique, but the core of the storm is now anticipated to move further towards the south. We have tropical storm warnings down here for Trinidad. We have hurricane warnings in effect for Tobago. Makes a lot of sense if you take the strongest wind core and extrapolate it out like so. This is where the winds are more than likely going to be their strongest. So unfortunately, Grenada, we're looking at a pretty ominous hit here over the next 12 hours. Excuse me, let me go ahead and shrink my ink just a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, the timetable is still very much so the same. You can see we have not changed. The only unfortunate factor that has changed here is the intensity. So we're still locked in for 2 o'clock in the morning. It is going to be to the south-southeast at about, I would say, maybe 170 degrees, 160 degrees from Barbados to your immediate south-southeast, about 60, 70 degrees to the north or the east-northeast of Tobago. And the conditions are still going to go downhill for you guys between 4 to 6, and I will say 4 to 7 a.m. Central or Atlantic Standard Time for Tobago specifically. 4 to 6 a.m. is going to be for Barbados, and then this thing's going to rapidly transition off to your immediate west, and you're going to be on the backside of it, in which case I think the wind field is going to be just a little bit smaller. We are looking at a very, very north side loaded hurricane, despite the fact that it is totally symmetrical. I'll show you windy here. I have windy pulled up on the next panel here. You'll see that the wind field is very concentrated to that right front quadrant in the northern side of this system. So even though the core is going to pass to the sound of St. Lucia and Martinique, you're still going to realize the effects of the system. The pressure gradient around it is very immense. It's very tight and is very strong. You can see the timetable once again to emphasize to you guys, it hasn't changed. This is 2 p.m. We're looking at 140 mile an hour hurricane, major hurricane, borderline Cat 5, moving through the Windward Islands and finally emerging on the opposite end of your guys' axes at about 2 p.m. So my interior timetable here at the Weather Center for my folks watching in St. Lucia, Grenada, and the St. Vincent and the Grenadines area, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. is when your conditions are going to go very rapidly downhill. Remember, it's small, guys, so it's going to come on really quick, but it's also going to be gone really quick. It's going to be fast. It's moving quick. We're still moving at about 21 to 22 miles an hour. I believe we've slowed down some, just a hair. I'm missing my chart here. Where is my chart? I need my advisory. Okay, so we have slowed just a little bit to 18 miles an hour, still moving at a very steady pace. Anything between 16 to 20 miles an hour is about on average these systems typically move. Any slower than that and we would have a big problem. Let's go over to windy. So like I was showing you guys, if you look at the windy streamlines here, you can get a really good feel for exactly where it's going to go, and you can extrapolate it out based on the current projected path. You can see our strongest core of the winds is going to scrape through Barbados right along its southern periphery, but you can see I like this windy overlay a little bit better than the graphic from National Hurricane Center because you can see how the lines are very blurry. They're very hazy. They're like clouds. They're shadowy. They don't come in definitive fine lines to where, yep, if you're not beyond this line, you're fine. No, it's very erroneous. You can see that it's a shady color here, like a watercolor almost. So if you follow this through time and you take the timestamp out just a little bit, that's not what I wanted to do. I need to slide it. There we go. Okay. Right there. There's 6 a.m. So like I told you guys, right on track. This is based off of our European model. Obviously, the intensity is going to be a little different, but the European model and our HAFS A and B models are right on track with what we've been kind of forecasting for you guys. Interior to the Weather Center, specific to the Weather Center, my own forecast for you guys. This is 6 a.m. Atlantic Standard Time, and you can see that we are winding down for Barbados. You're going to have the return flow along the backside of the system, but like I've been forecasting, 4 to 6 a.m. is when things are really going to ramp up, and then once we get beyond 6 a.m., we're going to start to trend down, just like for Trinidad and Tobago, particularly Tobago, 4 to 7 a.m. for you guys. Once we get beyond 7 a.m., given that we're at a different bit of longitude than Barbados, we're going to have to give it just a little bit longer to work its way off to your west-northwest, and then things are going to start to calm down, and then we have to pay very close attention for our folks just out ahead of it. You can see here, and I actually didn't look at this, to just be honest with you guys. I did not look at this in timetable at looking at windy.com, so I'm actually feeling pretty humbly proud of myself that my 10 to 12 p.m. time frame down there for St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Grenada is on track. You can see this is 10 a.m. The eye is moving into that area. If you come forward to about the lunch hour, we're behind it. So internally the Weather Center, our timetable looks good. The European model confirms it. National Hurricane Center and our hurricane models confirm it. So Barbados, Trinidad, and especially Tobago, we're looking at 4 to 6 a.m., the worst of the conditions, bleeding over to 7 a.m. for Tobago. And then from 10 o'clock, maybe a little bit earlier than that, depending on the feeder banding at that point in time, through to about the lunch hour, 12 p.m., conditions are really going to go downhill, and then you're going to start to improve shortly after 12, and then things should be, for all intents and purposes, out of hurricane-style conditions by 2 p.m., as indicated by the National Hurricane Center. So I'm very pleased to see that all the timing lines up. We have a really good timetable. You guys know when to be locked down and strapped in and holding on for when this thing comes through. I also have the radar pulled up here. You can see where the core of the storm is right there. There's our eye. And we're dangerously close to the same latitude line as Tobago here. Not a whole lot of activity going on for Barbados just yet. We are still quite a ways away. If you guys look at the ball here, where we actually have visible radar, that means our radar is coming out of Barbados, it looks like, so we're going to see the reflectivities blurred. There's beam angle and there's beam angulation that you have to take into account here. So as that beam comes out of Barbados and kind of rotates around the radar tower, you're missing a lot of the storm here. So don't take this as, oh, that's a tiny hurricane, you're going to be just fine. No, it's way far away from the radar. We won't have a very accurate picture of it until we go from here to about here, which is going to be around 4 o'clock in the morning. We'll see if I'm awake by then. I'm exhausted. I think I've blown blood vessels in this eye. I don't know if you guys can see, but I think because I'm so tired and I'm trying to work out and do other things, I think I blew a crap load of blood vessels in my right eye, and thankfully it doesn't hurt, but it definitely burns. I'm definitely tired, but I will try to make it a point to wake up early for you guys tomorrow to kind of bring you guys continuous coverage as we go down the road. Grenada and St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, you guys are not going to see anything for a while. Remember the timetable, guys. You need to be paying attention. The timetable. 4 to 7 a.m. 7 a.m. applies to Tobago specifically, 4 to 6 a.m. for Barbados. You guys further into the Windward Island chain, you guys are going to be going off between 10 and 12 tomorrow morning. 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. tomorrow. Early morning as the sun's getting ready to come up, that's when things are going to be going off for Barbados and Tobago, possibly getting into Trinidad if this thing continues further towards the south in terms of latitude, which could be a big change for our forecast even down the road. And then 10 to 12 p.m. is when you guys and windwards are going to see the worst of it, okay? Let's get into our HAFS models now. I'm going to switch this off because I'm looking at 700 millibars. Only reason I was looking at 700 millibars is because I want to see exactly what's going to happen. And in fact, I'm very thankful that we took our time getting up to this point in the brief, because now we can see the big picture here. We can see the huge overarching perspective here. We'll start with Beryl first. I have 96L up currently because I was very carefully scrutinizing what that thing is going to do. But let's start off with Beryl. So you can see the HAFS A model is thinking we are going to intensify, getting very dangerously close to scraping into Category 5 intensity. Now remember, we are going to be sitting at Category 4 strength, but you will, if you're closest to that Eyewall, Grenada, I'm looking at you. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I'm looking at you. Not so much St. Lucia. We would need it to really dive bomb towards the north all of a sudden for you guys to realize the full, strongest extent of this system. If you look, we're in a zoomed out perspective. This kind of gives you guys a general idea. This thing is tiny. So the pros and cons. The pros, it is tiny. Not everybody in the Lesser Antilles is going to be feeling this. In fact, Grenada, forgive me for saying this, but you guys may be getting blasted by Category 4 conditions, and St. Lucia might just be getting tropical storm force winds because we have such a tiny core here. This thing is spinning so fast that the arms of the figure skater are pulled in as close to the torso of the hurricane, the eye in this case, as possible. They're not out like this. They're not outreach, so they're not going to get hit as hard. we take it through time even further, and I'm very curious to see how this model run ends, because I haven't looked all the way to the end yet. You can see that the HAFS A model is still anticipating we're going to get weakened pretty substantially as this thing moves through. Very good news for the likes of Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. We're definitely expecting weakening and then re-intensification after we get through that, quote, graveyard area here in the mid-Caribbean Sea. Once we are past Jamaica, Cayman Islands, you guys should still be preparing. You guys should still be preparing because there's a lot of discontinuity. I'll show you the HWRF after this. I'll show you the HAFS B, and we're still wiggling and wobbling between intensity and track. But you can see all around, we're still expecting a southern pass for both of those islands as a Category 1, maybe still holding on to Category 2 intensity, depending on how strong of a weakening trend we have. And then from there, you can see we are lifting up. This thing is going to get into the BOC, and then from there, we just don't know. It could either go up, it could go west. This is where it gets very tricky right here. It gets extremely tricky. You can see in the wind flow, our high pressure is parked off the west coast of Florida, and there's a call in the winds right there. There's a neutral point in our winds. And the neutral point is important because that shows you where the air masses are changing. We have a front up through here. We have another area of air mass, I guess we can say just another different air mass parked over Mexico, Baja California. And then we have our subtropical influence on the opposite end to the east. So it's kind of an open ball game. We'll have to get a little closer in time. This is 126 hours out. We won't really know what's going to happen at this point until we're starting to feel the effects of it in Jamaica. When we're about 72 to 96 hours out, we'll start to get a better feel on if this thing's going to try to slowly creep off towards the north or it is going to crash and burn into Mexico, but we need to be paying attention to it. If we move on up to our 700 millibar heights, we'll go to the 7, we don't have 700 on here. Okay, we'll just use 850 then. If you look at the 850 flow here, our high pressure is very weak. We have an actual area of cyclonic curvature off the coast of Florida, which means our overall ridging through this quadrant is weakening. You can see all this fine peppering of vorticity indicating the presence of a front, so there is going to be a small window of opportunity for this thing to try to gain a bit more latitude as it tries to re-intensify in that somewhat more favorable environment. We'll switch on over to the HAFS B parent so we can take a look at it. We'll use our lower dynamics and we'll take a look at the mean sea level pressure and 10-meter wind. Same general thinking, albeit the HAFS B, surprisingly, is not verifying, or it's not initializing very well. Oh, wait a minute, this is still 12Z. Did I just show you guys the wrong model? No, this is 18Z. Okay, I don't know why the HAFS B is not all the way in. We'll take you in for a closer look using the zoomed-in perspective. So you can see the HAFS B is also expecting a little bit more intensification. Now you can see, looking at this surface wind field, Grenada, blasted. You're going to be getting a lot of return flow along the south side of the system. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, you're going to be in that core of Eyewall conditions. This is where Category 4 sustained, gusting above Category 5 threshold. So this is going to be a very intense situation. You're going to have to ride this out, and for all intents and purposes, just sit tight and hold on and just ride this puppy out. We're going to be with you every step of the way. I'm going to be checking in with you guys very periodically on social media, here on the YouTube in the Weather Center. And then you can see, because of how small this storm looks, because of the core of the storm, if you look right here, St. Lucia is not seeing very much. We're in the tropical storm, maybe low-end hurricane gusts, but a night and day difference here between Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and then St. Lucia and even Barbados. We're on the very, very periphery, the outer periphery of our tropical storm sustained winds and the gusting upwards of Category 1 hurricane strength. So very interesting here. We're going to be splitting hairs for all intents and purposes because this isn't a very large storm. Any wiggle and kind of nudge this way and nudge that way is going to mean the whole world to you guys getting ready to buckle up and hold on for this system. The HAFS B model is in full agreement with the HAFS A. You can see some really substantial weakening, and then, wow, look at this depiction. It takes it well off towards the south of Jamaica and of the Cayman Islands. So this model is trending a little bit weaker before a re-intensification begins along the western side of the Caribbean, plunging it into Belize, and then it moves. Okay, now we're losing the eyewall. So the HAFS B currently has this thing disintegrating over the Yucatan, so that's some positive news right there for sure. Still got to keep an eye on it. And then we'll switch on over to our HWRF, last but certainly not least. The HWRF is all the way in. Let me see if we have the full-sized HWRF. There we go. So to give you guys some perspective, 12 Zulu HWRF, after getting the hurricane data in, has a lot of people kind of shrugging their shoulders. Because if you go all the way towards the end of the 12Z HWRF, look at this thing. It's going up through the Yucatan Channel. And that is a big difference in comparison to what we saw earlier this morning at 0Z. You take a look at 0Z, and this thing is going right into the Yucatan at 12 Zulu today. We're moving up towards the Yucatan Channel, and this is why we need to continue to watch what happens for you guys here. We are not entirely out of the realm of possibility of seeing something sneaking into the Gulf of Mexico. I'm not quite sold on it moving up this far to the north. I really don't think that's what's going to be the case here. We don't have enough support that our ridge out here is going to move off to the east and weaken. We don't have a strong enough trough yet coming across the United States. I've been looking at the mid-levels particularly, and the amplitude of both these features do not suggest, again, I'm going to say it again, they do not suggest right now that we will see this thing completely avoid land interaction and go up through the Yucatan Channel. If that is what happens, we have a problem. So I'm going to rewind to the beginning, and I'm very curious to see what 18Z does here. Yeah, see, 18 Zulu, we're kind of back in the realm of possibility here, but this is where we get a little more problematic, because you can still see it trying to gain latitude here. We're still trying to gain latitude and move up towards Texas. So my key takeaway, the conclusion, it's not over until it's over. It is not over until it's over, okay? Large spread. As you can see, the two conclusions I want every single one of you guys that are not in the Windward Islands, that are not in Jamaica, that are not in the Cayman Islands, everybody watching from the United States, from Central America, and the Yucatan, the two conclusions, I'm staring right at the camera because I need you guys to listen closely. The two conclusions I want you to take into consideration is we still have enough lead time to prepare for anything considered a tropical storm to a Category 2 hurricane. We'll have to see exactly how much this thing holds together moving through the Eastern Caribbean and approaching Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. Two, you can clearly see you need to have your eyes wide open regardless of where you live in Central America, the Yucatan, Mexico, Texas, and Louisiana, because we have a huge model spread. You just saw the HAFS B has this thing going down here. The HAFS A model has it going up here. The HWRF has it going up here and gaining latitude. So that's just 3 models. Let me not get into the rest of the models. That's just 3 models, and look at how much geography we cover in this area. So we don't know. Okay, we don't know. For fun, we're going to go through all of our models now and take a look at Invest 96L. This is our wild card out here. So you can see the latest run is definitely thinking this thing's going to take its sweet time to intensify, if it even does. But notice we're gaining latitude, and we're gaining latitude pretty quickly here. This is already far much further to the north than what Beryl is expected to do, and that's because of the weakness in our high pressure here, and you can see it. If you look, we have southerly wind flow out through here. We have easterly wind flow here. We have westerly winds going off the state of Florida, westerly winds over the United States, so it looks like our internal model guidance is going to try to do something either like this or something along the lines of this. Earlier GFS modeling had it kind of pulling up like this, and that's not going to happen. We're not going to see our ridge completely fall apart in the Atlantic, guys. That is an eastward bias. That was a huge misnomer by the model and outlier. That's not what's going to happen. So U.S., British Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, I wouldn't be very concerned with this system. It's going to be much weaker, but we still need to pay attention to it. Let's see what the HAFS B has for us in terms of 96L. I haven't really taken a look at the HAFS B. So the HAFS B, same stride as the HAFS A, doesn't really develop it at all whatsoever. In fact, we lose it. So that's a good sign. We're not really seeing it developing at all, but we're way far out. We're way far out, so regardless, we still have a high chance this thing does form, and we need to pay close attention to it until it can get through the Lesser Antilles. But you can see, again, even with the HAFS B, despite it disintegrating, it's still trying to lift up further towards the north, so it puts new people on the game board that we are not currently looking at for impacts from Beryl. All right, here's the 18Z HWRF. So we're seeing very good agreement, although the HAFS A and the HWRF are the ones that develop this system and keep it fairly weak, gaining latitude. So this is the one that we'll have to pay close attention to, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's all she wrote. I have the HAFS models pulled up over here, but I'm going to go ahead and close up shop for these ones because we're not going to need them. We just covered everything that we need to cover. Let's get on to questions before we go any further into the live stream or before we disregard and get ready to close out the video. I want to take a look at what the 18Z European model has for us, just for fun. So yeah, this is going to definitely be an interesting feature to watch. This one's definitely going to be an interesting feature to watch. This, we have it pretty much nailed down almost for all intents and purposes. Do we have our 18Z European Ensemble guidance in just yet? There it is. We have 18 Zulu in. So yeah, I mean, the general trend is still down here towards the Yucatan and then slowly gaining latitude with a few more northern outliers here, trying to pull it up towards Texas and western Louisiana. Our second system is buried underneath the ensembles. It's buried down to the south, keeping it fairly weak. Obviously, as we've seen, these models are going to ebb and flow greatly. They're going to very, very quickly go back and forth. So let's not start drawing any conclusions with 96. That's going to be the kind of card we have to flip over and take it with a grain of salt as we go day by day. So we still have 2 looming threats over the next couple of days to monitor. Trinidad, yes, it's going to be a lot of rain, some embedded higher level winds, but I really do not think that we're going to see as significant impacts in Trinidad as we could possibly see in Tobago and further to you guys' north. Let's see, are we starting to see that Eyewall replacement cycle happen? Kind of looks like it. It kind of looks like it's trying to. Let me shrink this down. We don't need 90 images. Let me go down to 30 so we can save bandwidth on Tropical Tidbits. Yeah, it does look like we're going through an Eyewall replacement cycle. It's not completely caving in on itself, but it's definitely replacing. We're going to be transitioning from what's called a convective minimum to a convective maximum. So National Hurricane Center is thinking once the sun sets and we go into that more unstable period, early overnight hours, that's when we're going to continue to see more deepening. In this case, Jinjin, that's actually an excellent question. So to tell you the truth, this is definitely going to be a more high wind and rough surf kind of setup. It's going to be moving so fast that we're not going to realize a heavy extent of our storm surge, and we're not going to be seeing as cataclysmic of flooding as we typically would see if it were a stronger system moving much slower. If you come over here and look at the rainfall potential, you can see that locally, as the system moves through, you're going to have very, very substantial rainfall right along that Eyewall core. But across the spectrum, you're not going to see as much as we would typically see with a slower moving, more widespread tropical cyclone. So 8 to 10 inches are going to be for the areas directly impacted by the system itself, but we're not going to see as widespread heavy flooding across the spectrum, all across the board of our Windward and Lesser Antilles, than if this were moving slower. If it slows down, then obviously we're going to have to kind of up these numbers a little bit. In fact, I almost want to say that these numbers are a bit on the high end, to tell you the truth, but as quick as it's moving. I definitely agree with this corridor of very heavy rainfall as the core and all that significant convection near its center works its way through, but I'm not so sure. I think even for Barbados, we're going to sit more comfortably around 4 to 6 inches, especially with looking at the radar right now and looking at how far to the south this system is trying to move, but we'll still have to pay close attention to it. Luckily, the storm surge is not going to be as big of an issue, because remember, and a lot of folks get this confused, there's a difference between wave heights, swell heights, and storm surge. Storm surge is predominantly influenced by the low pressure underneath the center of a hurricane. The low pressure causes the dome of water underneath it, or the surface of the ocean underneath it, to create a bubbling dome, and that's what gets pushed with that system. It's kind of like it magnetizes, figuratively, the water because of that low pressure in the center of the storm, and that lifts the actual surface of the water. And because this is moving so fast, you're going to get storm surge, you're going to get flooding. You will flood, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be as catastrophic as if this system was coming in and allowing the full extent of that surge to inundate you guys. Suo, I agree, and I've been telling a lot of folks who've been messaging me offline, messaging me on other social media platforms, that this is a very serious situation. You know what? At this point, I don't say this maliciously. I don't say this because that's what I want you to do, but It's okay to be stressed out in a situation like this. Far too often do I see broadcast meteorologists and do I see folks on television, on other social media sources mentioning we're going to be okay, don't be scared, don't be alarmed. This is a scary situation. So if you are feeling stressed, anxious, if you are feeling, for all intents and purposes, fear, it's justified. And I'm not going to tell you that's wrong. I'm not going to encourage it either. So please don't try to manipulate my words and do some wordplay here. I would hate it if you did that. But understand that it's not every day, nor is it every hurricane season, that we have a Category 4 sweeping across such small island nations like this. This is an intense situation. It is a life-threatening situation for sure, in every sense of the word. And I don't use I don't use that terminology very often on this channel. I try to stay away from it because that's too sensationalized for things like a tropical wave and a tropical storm. No, this is a bona fide natural disaster that is likely going to occur for these areas. We've broken 2 different records in just a short 24-hour window. So it's okay if you're worried. It's okay if you have a little bit of fear building in. Just don't let that dictate the way you carry yourself through this event, okay? Thank you, TRG. Thank you very much for popping in very quickly, guys. So please, I hope that's making sense to you all. I'm not saying be scared, be very afraid. I'm not saying that, but not everybody is an extreme weather person. Not everybody enjoys looking and chasing these kind of features. Not everybody is built for this type of weather. So if you are sitting there stressed out, if you are sitting there anxious, it's just understand that it's a justified feeling and don't let that encapsulate you as this goes on, okay? We need to keep our wits about us. As I always emphasize, FYSA, for your situational awareness, we are going to get through this. Maintain your vigilance and your situational awareness, okay? You guys are going to get through it. It's unfortunately the nature of the beast during the hurricane season, and I thank the few of you who commented on one of my posts earlier because we were looking at something like this, unfortunately, happening back in December, January, and February. My longtime viewers, for all of you who are brand spanking new to this channel, I had been emphasizing as calmly and collectively as I could be, this is going to be a different hurricane season, and I really want us to watch our Lesser Antilles very closely because I think that's going to be our hotspot. Now, did I think that it was going to happen this early in the season? No, I'll full-heartedly tell you that, but looking at the guidance and looking at the data, it was very frustrating that back towards the end of last year and through the first quarter of 2024, all of our meteorologists and all of our official sources were saying, we don't know, we don't know, we don't know. And it's like, yes, we do. And we need to be confident in communicating this information. Well, I wholeheartedly saw this coming a mile away. And I know there are other sources out there who probably did too, and you may not have seen them. And now we're realizing it. And the problem is we're only in June. It's not like we're getting towards the back end of the hurricane season. We still have a long road ahead of us, and we're going to get you through it as best as we can, okay? Can I answer anybody else's question, please? Is there anybody else in here who has legitimate questions, especially in the immediate vicinity of this storm? Oh, yeah, you can see here on the water vapor. It's a far-out shot, but we're definitely eyewall replacing right now. Lord willing, this can give it a chance to just maintain its intensity as opposed to strengthening even further. If this eyewall replacement cycle goes over fast, then we're not going to be able to weaken it or sustain it. It'll probably strengthen a little bit more before it moves inland. Naz, do hurricanes coming straight from the Antilles tend to trend places like the Panhandle? Absolutely. Daddy Shark, absolutely. Anytime, in my opinion, a system gets in the Caribbean, it's all hands on deck. Everybody from Florida, the Mid-Atlantic even, all the way through to Texas and Mexico need to be paying attention. Now, granted, to elaborate a little bit further on that, it takes a lot of different moving pieces for it to specifically target the Panhandle. But absolutely, there's been a number of long trackers that have moved. Ivan, that did almost the exact same thing as what Beryl's doing currently. It did exactly that. Ivan in 2004 formed very low latitude, impacted the Windward Islands, and then came up to the Panhandle. So what else we got? Somebody else got you. So the system behind will not go north, but it's too early, so everyone is still in play. That was probably not worth even saying. What about confidence? Joe, it is worth saying. It's just unfortunately confidence is extremely low. Confidence is extremely low with that other system. We don't have, and that's another thing too, guys, is our hurricane models are not going to do very well with this system. The hurricane models are built internally to recognize distinct areas of low pressure, as well as organized cyclonic spinning between 35 to 40 knots. I've spoken to someone who works specifically with the hurricane models, and he told me that that's the criteria, especially when they get some reconnaissance data in there. It's not the end-all, be-all, but it helps tremendously in bolstering the accuracy of those models, and it's probably why we're seeing such huge fluctuations with it right now. One Nation Weather, I agree. Texas is not out of the woods. We are still very far away, and we need to be watching this thing every step of the way. We won't really know exactly what's going to happen for our Gulf Coast and for Mexico and the Yucatan until this thing is bearing down on Jamaica, Hispaniola, possibly the Cayman Islands. Confidence is definitely growing in the short term, 3 to 4 days, but outside of that, it's still a huge toss-up. You guys saw it in just 3 models. You guys saw it for just 3 models. Kevin Rivera, I do believe that after 96L, we're going to go on a break. I really do. I think that models are calming down. We're starting to see that we're past the favorable phase of our MJO and the convectively coupled Kelvin waves. The Kelvin waves, the large-scale waves in the pattern, I do think that the models are recognizing that, and we're going to go into a period of unfavorable environment, but then here we go. You can see August on the immediate horizon. You can see we still have our upward vertical velocities in our favorable window till about July 6th through July 10th, and then we're going to close up shop for at least a couple weeks. I'm going to get some much-needed rest. I'm still going to be doing live streams, but we're going to rebuild and we're going to recoup, and then back towards the very tail end of July, the last week of July, I think, is when we're going to have to reconvene and start watching again. I really do think so. While you guys are dropping questions in the chat, I want to look at the very, very long-range GFS to see what it's thinking for the end of July. So not huge indications just yet, but right at about the 21st and through towards August, I'm starting to see our members ticking up down here. Starting to slowly see more members down here towards the south. So yeah, guys. One Nation, whether you've done so well with this day and night coverage now, is always so informative, yet so responsive in streams and afterwards with comments. Keep it up. I hope to get you some thumbnail help soon, too. Yes, ONW, I was actually going to reach out to you and ask if you wouldn't mind helping me with a couple more thumbnails. I would sincerely appreciate it, but I also didn't want to bother, and I didn't want to kind of bombard you with what you have going on your channel as well. I don't want to do that. So if you're willing, then I will totally say 100% yes, I would love that. Or even if you throw a tutorial at me to just give me the basics, the general basics, and spin me up on different thumbnail creation, I would love that. That'd be great. Would there be anything worse as this coming again? Akia, in the short term, no. No, in the short term, when I say that, like another week or two, no. Beyond that, that's another thing we really need to put into perspective here is we're still only into June. Today's the last day of June, yes, but this is precisely what we see mid to late August. And we're going to go on a break here. So even if Beryl upwells those waters, taps into the ocean heat content and kind of wiggles it down a little bit, it's going to come back. It's going to come back because we still have a couple weeks of lag between systems. There's nothing on the immediate horizon, and I can show you guys that as well. If we look over here at the probabilities, you can see that after this system, we are anticipating a break. We finally close up shop. I mean, there's still subtle indications of that random wave that we saw a couple of days ago, but I've lost confidence in that. I do think that was a couple of rogue runs. But as you can see, once we get beyond these systems here, we're closing up shop. The MDR is going to quiet down. This here is just going to be vorticity bias from Venezuela and Colombia. So there's not going to be anything on the immediate horizon. This is out to July 12th. So after we get through these couple of spins down here, we're going to be closing up and we can start the recovery process for our folks down here, whatever takes place for Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, and then whatever happens as we get beyond that for the Gulf Coast, Mexico, and the Yucatan. And this time, despite other sources saying no, this is something that I'm very confident in. I don't think we're going to see another sudden surprise out of nowhere. This we had kind of had eyes on, and when everybody else was saying tropics are closed, we had eyes on this setup with plenty of lead time. We started talking about it. I got a lot of flack for it. My other viewers can testify to that. I got a lot of flack for highlighting this stuff. Nothing's happening. You're just trying to scare everybody. Sometimes you just got to take those home run swings and hope for the best. Sometimes you got to swing for the stands and hope for the best. But guys, if you could please give that like button a friendly nudge, I would sincerely appreciate it. I love the fact that we have a beautiful audience in here. Lots of very pertinent information that we need to get across. Just to give you a generalized timetable, once again, 4 to 6 a.m. Barbados, 4 to 7 a.m. Trinidad and particularly Tobago, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and St. Lucia. We're looking at about 10 o'clock in the morning, Atlantic Standard Time, to about lunchtime, 12 p.m. is going to be the worst of your conditions. I hope you're writing this down. I hope you're sharing this information with your friends, loved ones, your neighbors, anybody in the local area that you may have seen. Please just get that information across. Even if you don't share this information, at least tell them vocally. It's not about getting the views and getting the likes and all that. It's wonderful because that means we're reaching more people, and I absolutely enjoy. My number one favorite part of the gig here is just connecting with you guys and talking with you. That's my favorite part. I love weather. I love looking at the stuff, but my favorite part that keeps me coming back to this chair and sweating like I do, is getting to talk and communicate with you guys. And for those of you who are brand spanking new to this channel, you are never going to get a biased opinion, a biased perspective from me. You're going to get as straight of a shot, no nonsense conclusion from me as possible. And I think that's sometimes why folks shy away from this channel, because I'm not afraid to tell you this is going to be bad, and I'm not afraid to tell you nothing's happening. I'm not. That's for certain. And I think that's my military weather background. For anybody who's brand spanking new to this channel, I am a professional weather forecaster. I'm not someone once told me last year I'm an armchair amateur. I am not an armchair amateur. I am a professional weather forecaster, 10 dedicated years in the United States Air Force as a weather forecaster, a weather analyst, and now I'm currently serving as a naval equivalent as an aerographer with the Weather Center in Norfolk, Virginia. So 12 solid years of weather experience, and I am about 3/4 of the way to my atmospheric science degree. So if anybody out there wants to know my credentials, we have a lot of new viewers joining us. I'm not the most experienced person on the planet, but I have professional experience, and I'm serving you guys as best as I can, okay? That's my service before self. I could tell you honestly, guys, and I know we're going on to a sidebar here, but after the thunderstorm activity out here happened in Central Florida today, it was such a beautiful day out. And I wanted so bad to just get outdoors and go and enjoy the last day of the weekend. But service before self. I told you guys I was going to be back here spending the night with you, and here we are. So here we are. And I wouldn't have it any other way. We're going to get a break. We're going to have time to relax. We're going to have time to rebuild and recoup. And I hope that you guys, as a matter of fact, if I could ask everybody in this live stream right now, please, sincerely, hit that like button, click subscribe if you haven't done so already, and please drop in the comment section where you are watching from. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me where you're connecting from so I can reach out to you. You can ask any of my longtime viewers and even the newest viewers who have come around from last year who thought I was just hype and fake. And, it's so humble to have so many people recognizing the dedication that this entire community has. You guys are as integral to this channel as I am. We are all in this together. So please, if I could ask you, hit that like button, click subscribe if you haven't already, and please drop me a comment. Even if you just leave me in the comment section below, you can leave it in the chat as well, but in the comment section of this video, the hard comment, so I can see it later. Drop in the comment section so I can respond to you and connect with you where it is that you're watching from, so then I can try to give you as point-based of an accurate forecast as possible. Wow, Portugal, very good. Texas coast, Corpus Christi. No, I'm just kidding. Corpus Christi. Mike, thank you for the $5 donation. Jamaica, Live Oak, Florida, Houston, Barbados, Central Florida. Showboy, I appreciate you too. Rainy days in Florida are fun. I agree. We need this rain. Cayman Islands, Dominica, Louisiana from Southwest Florida just subbed his daughter. Thank you very much. Antigua, Charleston. I met a lot of you guys in Antigua, Barbuda, and Anguilla last year during Hurricane Tammy. That was another system where we were sitting here in the Weather Center for hours on end. Wow, Sally from New York City. Wonderful. Welcome in. Thanks for watching from way up there. Fort MM, Florida, you rock. Nazario Golf Nut, thank you very much. Jamaica, Houston, Texas, Puerto Rico, Yadira, thank you for joining us in Puerto Rico. I have family out there. Cartagena, Colombia. Wow, Antonio from Colombia, look at that. New Orleans, watch from Curacao, Webster, One Nation Weather, Yo, Bestie, Conway, South Carolina, Tobago, Bradenton, Florida. Very familiar with Bradenton, Florida. Central North Carolina, New Jersey. Wow, awesome. Cayman Islands, Brantford, Tampa, Florida, watching from Jamaica. You guys are fantastic. This is great. I love it so much. This is what it's all about. I feel like to be a successful broadcast meteorologist, which is like my end-all, be-all career aspiration, you need to not only know how to communicate the weather, but you need to know how to reach an audience. And I feel like in a lot of different professional career fields, not even weather, if you don't know how to communicate with people, if you don't know how to connect with people, then you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it. And that's why I love this so much. It gives me the opportunity to sharpen my skills and increase my experience talking with you guys. So please, if you guys could, when we close out the live stream, in the hard comments, not in the chat, because I want to refer to this later. I want to remember this. If you could, in the comments section below this video, drop me a comment with your location. And I will make it a point, if it's not tonight, first thing tomorrow morning when I wake up, I'll respond to everybody. I can promise you that, okay? Even if it takes me over an hour, I'm going to respond to you guys. So if you could, once we close out here, let's go ahead and let's meet in the comments. Let's all congregate digitally in the comments. So with that being said, we're going to get ready to close out the live stream, guys. We got a long night ahead. I will be back in touch with you first thing tomorrow morning. I may want to go to the gym. Please don't crucify me for that. I got to get a workout in. But as soon as I'm done at the gym, I will go live right before I have to clock in for work, and then we'll meet again in the evening, and we'll just keep talking tropics. Tomorrow is July 1st. We're going to be turning the calendar into July. Even though we have so much stuff happening in June, we have to rein ourselves in, guys, and I don't want to alarm anybody. We really got to rein ourselves in after this is done and realize we are only just getting started with July. We are only getting started with July, so we have a lot of ground to cover, okay? We're going to get you through this system. We're going to get you through whatever else is on the horizon. And you can count on us here in the Weather Center to give you guys as straightforward of an answer as we possibly can, okay? So please, again, if you have any additional questions, or if you'd like to do that address callback, drop the address in the chat, or not in the chat, I'm sorry, not in the chat, in the comment section down below. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop me a comment or a question in the comment section. Reach out to me on my X, my TikTok, my Instagram. In fact, as I just realized, my TikTok is popping off right now. Yep, my TikTok is popping off right now. I'm already at 15,000 views on my TikTok update. So I'm going to go from YouTube right over to TikTok and start talking to people on there, guys. I should honestly invite them in for a live stream very soon. But you guys have a wonderful rest of your night. We will be thinking of you down there in the Windward Islands. You are going to get through this. I promise you that. We are going to get through this. We will. We need to get through this because we have a long hurricane season still ahead. And if this is any kind of indication, if we're going to have another 04 and 05, it's already shaping up. So we got this. Remember that. We give it that like button, a little nudge. Click subscribe. Turn those notifications on if you haven't already, guys. And Godspeed to the Windward Islands. You guys are going to be okay. Just remember, stay inside. Avoid travel. Do not venture outside of your house this morning and into early tomorrow. Please just stay sheltered in place. Touch base with your loved ones. Connect with other folks as you can right now. Check in on your neighbors. Do one last glance over of whatever it is that you have obtained throughout your prep. Sit tight and hold on. Sincerely. Hunker down, sit tight, and hold on. And we're going to get through this. Tomorrow's going to be a brand new day, and as the sun comes up, we're slowly but surely going to be working our way towards the backside of this system, and we can put it behind us. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll talk to you again soon. We'll see you in the morning. But until next time, this is Weather Center Nazario signing out.